Hi guys, my name's Seb Tudor, I'm the man on the Silver Mountain and welcome back. Today, it's a short introductory video to a thing that I'm going to be talking about over the next few weeks. And this is another kind of tool, kind of like some of the other things that I've talked about in the past, like DISC and whatever else, that's more of a tool for introspection and like monitoring yourself, but does give you a little bit of insight into other people and potentially kind of like help you recognize certain behavior patterns that put people into kind of categories that allow you to maybe better appreciate what's going on. And again, this is more focused towards relationships and the dating scene and the way that people act in that kind of environment and so on and so forth. But there are a couple of wider implications, but not many. But ultimately, the thing that I want to talk about, which I'll put up here, is the scale of a person, or the spectrum of behaviours that a person can have overall within kind of, especially the dating scene, as that's very much more active scene than being in a long-term relationship. But I came across this in the work of a dating confidence coach called Carlos Zuma, who I'm sure you can Google and find his work. But I came across this ages and ages and ages ago, and I've seen it kind of repeated and brought up like several places since then. And as a result, you've got this scale that kind of runs from active to passive, or from kind of neurosis at one end up to kind of psychosis at the other, almost, in the lightest of touches, whereby you've got the stereotypical kind of nice guy or nice girl. And as I said, actually, or as I'm about to say rather, these apply to both men and women. In Carlos's original work, he was very much focused on the male side of things. Initially, I saw outside of his work in a couple of different places. There was one for guys and one for girls, but as time has gone on, I've only seen the one scale that's been related to both. And I feel like it's a fairly, some of the behaviours, as I've said in regards to some of my other videos, men and women will have a way of going about a specific behaviour in a different way. For example, men with aggression will be far more physical, whilst women will be far more aggressively communicative. But it still comes down to the overarching set of behaviours, the overarching methodology behind what they're doing will be in some way similar. So this scale still seems to apply to both male and female, and even if there are more stereotypes on one side than the other, doesn't mean that the other doesn't exist. But as a result, starting at one end, you've got the nice guy or nice girl with the all of the white knighting kind of fedora wearing memes that float around the internet. You've got the frozen individual, or the otherwise known as the latent individual on the initial scale that I saw, which is very much someone who's more paralysed by their situation. You've got the good, which is more of a kind of Disney prince almost kind of archetype. The ideal, which is a full balance of all of these behaviours for the most adaptable and probably most aware and kind of easy to get on with individual. Then you've got the bad, which is far more kind of the stereotypical bad boy, maybe someone from a rock band or someone like that has an awful lot of women attracted to them, or one of a supermodel with something of a reputation for as being a celebrant or something like that, who again draws an awful lot of attention from people around her. And then you've got the collector, who is somewhere between, who's on the verges of being a purely negative experience for people to one extent or another, but who isn't quite so far off the scale as some of these others. And then we've got the arsehole, who again isn't necessarily purely bad, but is an arsehole. And then you've got the psycho, which is where you start getting into the real negatives, the real downsides of this end of the scale. There are downsides on both, but that one is probably the one that causes the most kind of area of effect damage around that individual. But ultimately, I wanted to introduce this to you guys because, as said, you can be using this to monitor yourselves. You can use it to gain a little bit of insight into other people. You know, not a huge amount, obviously, but the thing that I have used this with clients to do more so than anything else is you can go, right, I'm monitoring myself. You can be, depending on your situation, depending on what you're doing, you can be in numerous places along the scale at one time, or you can bounce around the same way that your disc profile over time will change and stuff like that. But you can use it to monitor yourself. You can use it to try and kind of narrow in on where you are and what sets of behaviors you are demonstrating most often. You can use it to kind of push yourself, because if you're at one point on the scale and you want to be further towards the ideal, or you wanted to maybe change your lifestyle so that you were maybe more of a bad boy than you were a frozen individual. And I realised that my hand gestures are actually probably the complete opposite to the scale up here, but you know, there you go. But with all of that, you've got you've got that capacity to kind of push yourself and find a way from one point to another point. And as said, it gives you a small insight into other people. But again, you're going to be noticing behaviors. But as I'll talk about as we actually get into further videos on each one of these categories, a lot of the perceptions of that you have of others and the way that they're acting and the way that their relationships are going and the way that they are starting and dealing with those relationships, a lot of those may very well be completely inaccurate because you aren't seeing everything and you aren't able to read that person's mind. And so the insight that you might get is very broad strokes, and as a result, you know, it's this as a tool is more for you to use with yourself to make you get where you want to go, so that you've got that tool, that monitoring tool, to pick out where you're going and where you want to be. It's not so much a thing of, oh, well, now that I've looked at this scale, I can see how all of these people interact because this person fits into this category. You know, as with DISC, it's broad strokes, but you need to have a greater understanding to one degree or another of the ins and outs of the profiles and the other bits and pieces that are developed in DISC, for instance, to actually have a greater understanding of a person just from a graph. Yeah? Here, as said, very much for you to take on board these categories, some of which are quite extreme and stereotypical, and to kind of place yourself where you want to be and work towards it. But anyway, as said, I'll be doing videos from now on and over each one of these different categories, and you know, I'm hoping to discuss them with you guys as we go. But otherwise, if this is an interesting start, if you want to see these videos, then please drop me a like and you know, tell me what you guys think about just these basic kind of categories and what you think we might find in them as we go through them. Yeah, so drop that down in the comments there. Otherwise, yeah, drop me a like and please subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the video tomorrow. Take care, guys.